Hello and welcome, Adam Thomas from Balancing Touch Reflexology. So good to see you and thanks for joining me today. Today I've been getting I've been reading through my comments on my YouTube, and I get quite a few comments lately on technique. So I want to try and bunch these all together and answer some questions that you have on technique. I just want to talk a little bit about a little bit of my thinking on technique, right? So, first of all, I don't believe there's one way to do something, right? We're not like working on a car where we, take out a part and, flip it around and put it in and it's the wrong way and it won't work, right? Reflexology doesn't work that way. Our focus here is to balance the body and loosen tension and, relaxation basically, right? And stimulate the kind of nerve endings and all those things in your feet to get your brain and your whole body connection, right? It's a holistic practice. So that's what our focus is. So doing something a certain way is fine, right? But there's other ways to attack the same goal. It's kind of the same theory as if you're trying to climb the mountain, right, to get to the very top. The top might be one single point, but there's an infinite possibility of ways to reach that one point, right? So you can go around and round and round and take 3 days, 4 days to get to the top, or you can be like, no, I want to go this way, and you go up this way and get there. But the end result is the same, right? So the end result in reflexology is to relax and bring that body sort of back to a sense of balance, right? So that's our goal there. And so I think that there isn't one way or a certain technique that's better. There are certain reflexes that work in a certain direction, right? So the digestive system, in your body comes down and then it works in a clockwise direction. Large intestine follows the same thing, clockwise direction. So there are certain things that you should be aware of, that they work in a certain direction. But other than that, it's all technique, right? So if you go and look around the world, you see different massage techniques, for example. And some people, their technique is completely different, but the end result is the same, is to relax the muscle, right? So that's sort of my little spiel on technique there. So yeah, let's get into answering the questions. And let's see, the first question I have here is, do you have to walk your hands or can you use oils to glide, right? And hope that makes sense. So yeah, it totally makes sense. Yes, you can use oil, you can use cream, you can use anything that you think you're comfortable with. Oh, that's another thing too. Back up a little bit to the technique thing. I want to just mention something too. None of us are the same. So our bodies are built different. We operate our bodies differently. So one technique that works for somebody might not work well for the next person, right? So if we say something simple like, okay, yes, it's good to have biomechanics where you're sitting up straight and your spine and everything's relaxed and your arms come out at a 90 degree and all this stuff. So yeah, that's good and all that. But if you've been, have bad posture your whole life and you're kind of like this, and you get up and you do that, and then you force yourself, okay, I'm doing reflexology now, so now I have to get into proper biomechanics and do that, and then you're all stiff and it's hard to breathe because you're trying to have this perfect kind of posture. Well, that's not going to translate well to the feet, right? So my point here is, and yes, it's probably good to have better biomechanics when you're working, better posture, yes. But if you're uncomfortable when you're doing it, then it's sort of defeating the purpose. So outside of the reflexology, you would probably work on your posture, right? And then when you can bring your good posture into the reflexology session when you're ready to work that way, right? So that's a little bit there. So yeah, getting back to this question, yes, you can use oils for sure. Personally, I do not like to use oils or creams or things like that at the beginning of the session because I use my thumbs and fingers and everything as my eyes and my sensors. If there's a layer of oil over top of that, it takes away a lot of the information that I'm wanting to get, right? So that's my take on it. But some people do a sliding technique the entire time. Like when I went to Thailand, they have their Thai reflexology thing, and they use something like Vaseline and some kind of green balm, and that's what they used the entire session, and it was fantastic and it was great. So again, the end goal was to relax my feet and my body, and that's exactly what happened. Personally, I don't like to do that. At the end of the session, I do add oils and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say, again, if using oil and cream and stuff is your thing, then do it. Do your thing, because that's what speaks to you, right? So yes, that doesn't really answer your question as a yes-no response. And a lot of these questions are not going to be a yes-no. A lot of the answers are not going to be yes-no response, because there isn't. I really believe that it's up to you, right? So if you like using oils, you like experimenting with that, and there's a lot of oils and stuff that you can use that will really help benefit people, right? In Ayurveda, they have a specific bunch of different oils that work different body types and stuff like that. So that's really fascinating. So yeah, like it can be a really great benefit for you. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Next question is on this video of how to work the head in reflexology, okay? And this is part of my Tricky Reflexes series. So there's a bunch of comments here. We were taught to go up 5 zones horizontally, then vertically. Is there a reason for this? One person was taught to go, they were taught horizontally. So to work across here, so obviously we're talking about the feet here in this video, but the hands are the same. And then, so work all the way across here, I believe, something like that, maybe on each zone, right? Or maybe they worked all the way across this way, and then move down and work all the way across that way. But the point here was, when they were taught, is to work in horizontal fashion, work all the reflexes to the head, and then to work vertically, right? So what this technique is teaching you is to really focus your attention, I believe. So working up and down first, and working across first, or a second, right? So what I'm doing in this technique is I'm actually showing you to go up vertically and then across horizontally, and then you move those over a little bit and go up and up. So if you take these two patterns and overlay them, what I'm doing in my technique is just combining the way that the commenters was taught, right? So again, this comes down to a technique thing and a preference, right? So if you were taught that way and that feels comfortable for you, then that's the way to do it, right? For me, I tend to forget when I'm working on small areas how many times I did things. So by doing this little pattern, I know that I started over there and then I work this way. So that's the reason I do this, is so that it helps me remember and stay focused on the area that I'm doing. I think if I was to separate it the way that was, it's and think, okay, I'll go up this way, or go across this way, and then go across this way, and yeah, I could come up with a pattern that would make me do that. But I would I think I would maybe lose count, especially if I was talking with the client and stuff. So this technique really helps me focus, where the other technique might actually help you focus a bit better. But the point here is that you are focused on working the head. So if we look at the head here, there's something, there's areas in the head and stuff that don't need to work in a specific direction, right? There's tons of stuff in here going on. So that is really important to realize as well, is that there's no certain pattern. So what is essentially happening here, so I would have to cut down my head in half, right? Because that would be one side. And so I would be working lines across this way, and then I would switch and work lines this way, right? And then I would probably come over to the other foot. Or they would do on the other foot horizontal lines, and then vertical lines, right? So that's fine. That's great. Keep it up if that's what works for you. Again, try other techniques, right? That's why I'm out there on YouTube and stuff, because I want to learn more. And I'm probably going to take this technique and try it and see how that worked. But when I was taught reflexology, I was taught to do that, right? I was taught to go in one way and then switch and come across the other way. I just wanted to focus my attention a bit more for me, for myself, right? So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, there is no real reason that I do it except to keep myself focused. This next question that I get is quite similar. I get it asked a little bit different ways and stuff. But the question is, how often can you perform this process, right? So this is related to the digestive system. So if somebody's having digestive issues, so that's what they're asking about. So how often can somebody have this happen? So if I find an area that is quite sensitive and things like that, I will give it to the client as homework, right? As to bring home, and these are the areas that you kind of work. And I usually go by how sensitive it started and how it has decreased, right? Kind of like the same way that you go and work out at the gym. You don't work your arms every day, for example, right? Or else you're gonna kind of like burn out your arms, right? So same thing, you don't want to just be overstimulating of the area. So there's a kind of a fine balance, and this is where the art of reflexology comes in. But as for home play, for homework, I would just give them the way to work it and tell them to just notice if there's a difference, like a couple times a day, see if they can reach down to their feet or their hands and work on that area, and just notice if there's any change in the sensitivity levels when they do it, right? So yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer here, but if we're talking about like sessions, I really like to have about 3 sessions within 2 weeks. Okay, so every couple days, right? And that way it gives a nice, break in between sessions. You can the client can notice if there's been any changes, how their mood is, how they're feeling, right? That sort of thing there. If it's something that we want to really work on, I might do it a little bit closer together, like every couple days, right? But personally, I don't like to do every day me working on a client. I find that if I give something to the client to work on themselves, an everyday process can be okay, because I know, at least for me, my human nature is if somebody gives me homework to do every day, I'm probably not going to follow the rules, and I might do it every second day or something like that. So I really encourage clients to do something a couple times a day, if possible, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of how I would approach it. Obviously, if there's some kind of adverse effects, where they're not feeling good and it's making them feel worse, obviously stop doing that and let the body kind of just adjust its own way, right? So, yeah. And just to add a little something else on to the end of that, I was reading another comment, and it said basically like, how much time do you work on each reflex, okay? So I really like to work at least 3 times on the same area, right? If it's a sensitive area, I'll work it, and I'll come back, do some other reflexes, and I'll come back to it, see how it's feeling, and go do some other reflexes and come back and see how it's doing a 3rd time. If not, I'll probably work it another 3 times, or at least another couple times, to see if that area has changed at all. So yeah, that would be the way that I do it. But I really think groupings of 3 is a real good sort of focus, and you just you'll work the area really well if you do something 3 times. Okay, so I think I've been blabbing too much here, but I think I'll just answer one more question on technique, and it's actually more of an observation on your technique, right? So it's more of a not visual, but feeling sort of cue, right? So this one is related to how to work the nervous system, and in it I mention that I feel tension on the toe, right? And so the commenter here was, how can you tell there is tension in the big toe? So in the video, what I was feeling was around, and it was also in comparison to the right and left, was around this area here on the big toe. I was just feeling there was tension there. How did I feel this tension? Well, first of all, it wasn't really bending as nice and flowy as the other side, right? There was a little bit of that. There was also callus buildup here. So it was kind of stiff and hard. And you can kind of just, at least after time you've been working on a lot of people, you can notice that there's tension there. It's sort of the same as if you know, it's kind of neat. My wife's a hairdresser, and she can feel tension in people's head, right? By the way that this kind of moves, right? Like some people's this doesn't move at all, and they have quite a tense cranium, right? And so the less movement there. So that's sort of like a bigger sort of visual that you can get when you're working on smaller areas, is that you can feel just the tension in that. And then also, when there's tension on the big toe, on the pad of the toe or just under the toe. So I was feeling it under the occipital ridge here, which is related to here, right? The tension was also kind of down the whole toe, right? All basically zone 1, right? I felt it was tense. And so that's how I was kind of feeling the tension there. And so when you're working and using your technique, right? So for example, if I was using oil, I might not be able to pick up on that kind of a tension, right? Because there's another layer there, and then my technique would be different, that I wouldn't be so focused on a little area, right? So just like the comment before, working horizontal and then switching to work vertical. When you do that, you get a lot more information because you're focused on one direction. How does that feel when I'm walking my thumb all the way around this way, right? And then I switch to go up and down, right? You can really get focused in on feeling tension and working the little points there, right? So that's why it's really good. After a while, I trained myself to be able to move back and forth this way, but I'm still focused on feeling for tension in that area that I'm working on, right? So I hope that kind of makes sense. Your technique, I really think, needs to be such so that these become your eyes and your ears, right? So whatever technique you use, even if you're using, I don't have one here, like a massage stick, right? That's a totally different technique, right? I have used a massage stick. I do use a massage stick to push on certain points, right? Again, in Thailand when I was there, at the end of the session, they have, I believe it's 26 points of relaxation that they hit, and they hold, and that feels really, really great, right? And then they sort of rub around this way, and I was not 100% sold on it, but of course it felt good, and it stimulated my feet in a different way. But that's a totally different technique, and is it wrong? No, it's just different, and it's for a different purpose, right? So when I use a stick and stuff, it's for a different purpose, and just to get at something, to work the same thing a different way, right? So I hope that makes sense to you out there. If you have any comments on the way that you work that, you know, your techniques and that sort of thing, just let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching today, and of course, remember to keep your feet happy. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. If you're interested in learning more about reflexology, you could subscribe to the channel below. It's also very helpful to hit that like button, and feel free to share it with anybody who you think might be interested in it. You can find my online courses, Reflexology Charts, and other reflexology goodies over on my website, which is balancingtouch.ca. Thank you so much for watching today, and if you have some more time, you can check out some other videos. Till next time, this is Adam Thomas from balancingtouch.ca. See you later.